Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. We're taking a look this month at various hodgepodge of Transformers that I've got. But I wanted to kick it off with somebody that's relatively new on the shelves. This is the Kingdom and Legacy version of Blaster. And his little sidekick, Eject. Now, I say it as Kingdom and Legacy, even though you only saw the Kingdom box, due to the fact that Blaster is one of them that is scheduled from Kingdom to be re-released, exactly the same, in Legacy, which should hopefully be starting to appear on our shelves here in the United States, because I'm getting a little tired of seeing the boxes advertised in European sites, but not here in America. So hopefully that's going to happen soon. Blaster is one of three that is going to be in both Kingdom and Legacy. The others are Galvatron, which is kind of pointless because any of us who really wanted Galvatron have probably already gotten him in Kingdom. And the core class version of Hot Rod, who, like Blaster here, was coming out at the very tail end of Kingdom, and many of us may have not gotten the opportunity to find him. I, myself, just happened to find these two at an antique store. Why somebody was selling him there is beyond me, but, hey, I found him. Alright, at any rate, let's take a comparison look at the Generation 1 version. We'll move Eject aside for a moment. Okay. The tall one here, for those of you who aren't aware of it, is the original Blaster from 1985. Blaster was released as a counter to the Decepticon character Soundwave, especially since the cassette transforming gimmick that they worked in tandem with proved to be a rather popular gimmick, as the Hasbro and Takara could constantly release smaller figures to keep going along with the larger cassette players, even though they had long since been taken off of store shelves, as both Blaster and Soundwave would disappear by 1987, but cassette figures would still appear in the following years after that. Now, interestingly, while Soundwave did include a cassette minion, Blaster here did not include any minions. In fact, Blaster would not have any minions until 1986. Of course, in 1986, that's when Eject was released. And here, of course, is his Generation 1 counterpart. Now, here in the United States, and I believe also in Europe, Eject was sold in a 2-pack alongside with Ramhorn. Whereas in the Japanese market, the cassette figures would be released individually, but they would come in a tiny box. The cassette figures in Japan were also released with a clear plastic cassette tape case that they could be stored in to kind of resemble an ordinary music cassette tape. Generation 1 Eject also was famous, like his many brethren that also came out that year, in having specially colored guns. The early versions, like this version here, had gold-chromed guns. Later versions would have silver-chromed guns. Now we're going to take a closer look here at Eject so that we can play with Blaster's feature later in the video. But first we need to pause and change the batteries. Okay, let's bring Eject here a little closer to the camera so you can get a good look at him. Eject is sold with Blacklister in either Kingdom or Legacy, so you will get a little guy to play with him. Now, whether or not they're going to do some more minions for him is hard to say at this point. Hopefully, if they do decide to do that, to play with the gimmick more, the distribution goes better than what it did in the Siege line. Because let's face it, in the Siege line, when they had Soundwave last released, they did create minions, but they were not equally distributed. The first wave of minions were very easily found, and were quite common in a lot of the stores. The second wave, however, was produced in lesser numbers, and thus was extremely difficult to find. I myself had to rely on my friends to find a set for me. And then lastly, they did a third set, but it was a Hasbro Pulse exclusive, and it sold out very quickly. So, Hasbro, if you're going to play with this gimmick, do a better job of the distribution. Those who might actually want them would like a better chance to get them. At any rate, I like how they've updated Eject here. The trans blue plastic is a nice touch and does make him stand out a bit more. He's lacking in guns, unfortunately, but I can live with that. I have also seen on eBay there is somebody who has made some custom guns for Eject, if that's your thing. Now, taking a look at Eject's articulation, he surprisingly has a fair amount for a figure as small as he is. His head can be turned from side to side, and even though it's more for transforming him, he can rock his head up and down a bit. His arms only go out about so far, and they do rotate at the shoulder all the way around very well. He does have a hinge at the elbow, so you can bend his arm at the elbow 90 degrees, and he does have a swivel at the bicep, so he does have G.I. Joe-style battle grip. He unfortunately does not twist at his hips, so he can't dance very well. You can spread his legs apart into a full splits. You can raise his leg up at the hip greater than 90 degrees, and you can bend his leg at the knee, also greater than 90 degrees. He also does have a bit of a thigh cut, but it's at his knees. So he does have quite a range of motion. And to go along with it, he is also transformable. To do that, to transform him, we got to take his arms. You're going to rotate them sideways so that we can see these blue circles here on his forearms. Then you're going to work them at the shoulder and elbow to fold them up and press them against his belly. Just exactly like that. We're going to turn his head all the way around. And then you're going to fold it down here into his chest cavity. You're going to take the legs and we're going to turn them at the knee so that his feet would face each other. Oh, we got it backwards. His feet should face the opposite way. They should face outwards, because we're going to fold them up at the side like that, and then you bend them at the knee, and then just snap them into place right underneath the circles from his arms. And there we go. He's done up, excuse me, in a similar style to a cassette tape. Not too much reminiscent of his Generation 1 counterpart. The head likes to spring up on this one. Either that or he's curious to see what the new one can do that he can't. But of course, unfortunately, the backside is pretty plain on this one, whereas the backside on the original was coated in stickers to allow you to see that he looked like a cassette tape. I'll set him here just off camera so you can see this. Of course, Blaster does have the same gimmick that the original one did, but instead of it being a specific button on the panel, all four of them are fused together. They do have him set up where he has one finger sticking out on his right hand, so that if you wanted to, you can position him so that he's pushing the button to release it. But all you have to do is simply push this silver piece in, and the door pops open. And then Eject just simply needs to slide in and closes up just fine. Now, as the wind shakes the house here a little bit, let's take a look at Blaster. And of course, as you can see, he's done up pretty similar to his Generation 1 appearance, but is also meant to invoke more of his cartoon appearance by the way they've designed his head. Bring it a little closer here to the camera. Blaster, of course, comes with only one accessory, so we'll take a look at that. Besides Eject, of course. And that is his gun. It's a nice looking gun, has all the features you would want. You got a nice stock here at the back of it, and a nice sniper scope on the top of it, and a couple of post holes along the side. It's meant to invoke the look of the Generation 1 gun, and as you can see, it does a pretty good job of capturing its likeness. It's not perfect, but it does capture all the key points. Of course, for any of you who haven't seen my original video of Blaster, this spot here, the open hole on the original gun, was meant to hold earbuds, because the original toy in Japan was a working radio, a feature that Hasbro would unfortunately take out. Of course, at the time, I didn't realize it, but apparently the radio features were all in here where the cassette door is, and you would insert the cassette somewhere on the back side of the original toy. In fact, there are a few instances of Generation 1 blasters that do have a rear panel that can somewhat be removed to allow that to happen. However, it is very difficult to do, so I would suggest you probably not try to figure out if yours can or not. At any rate, this one was custom made. This one was specially made, rather, to not play at all, so I guess if you want Blaster to dance to any tunes, you got to provide it on your iPod. At any rate, let's take a look at Blaster's articulation. And he's got about what we expect from these modern Transformer toys. We can turn his head from side to side with relative ease. And of course his head's on a ball joint, so it will look up and down. His arm can be raised out to the side, about so far. And he can rotate at the shoulder all the way around. His arms can be bent at the elbow 90 degrees. And he does have a swivel at the bicep, so he also has G.I. Joe battle grip. He can be twisted at the hips, so Blaster can obviously dance. You can spread his legs apart into a full splits. He also has a cut at the thigh, so you can adjust his legs at the thigh. You can raise his leg at the hip 90 degrees, and you can bend him at the knee 90 degrees. So all in all, you do get quite a range of motion on Blaster. Okay, we're going to transform Blaster, and while it's not as simple as his Generation 1 counterpart is to transform, it also isn't very difficult either. And you can do it with Eject in or out of the box, but for the purposes of this, we'll take him out. And then we can put him back in when we're done. Alright, first thing you're going to do, you turn Blaster around. You'll lower this portion here on his back. Because then you're going to take his head and fold his head down and inside, and then close that back up. Now we're going to turn him around to the front, and you will stretch his arms out to the sides like so. And rotate his arms at the bicep so that he's got his arms up like that. Then you're going to take his hands and you will fold the hands down onto his forearms. Then you will bend them at the elbow and fold them up so that his fists are now back on top again. Then, lastly, bring the arms back down to the sides, just like that. Well, next we're going to come down here to his legs, and where we got these speakers at, you're going to push them on the one side and rotate them around so that they now have these straight lines through them. Just like that. Then, of course, once you've done that, you can come down here and fold his feet up and put them inside. And then next, we twist him at his hip all the way around so that we can open up these red doors on his back, on the back of his legs, rather. Open those up, fold out the additional red piece that's inside them. Then you're going to turn the legs at the thigh so that you see these big speakers. Then we're going to flip up his hip plate. Because then we're going to make Blaster do a bit of a splits. But also, as you can see here on his legs, there's a bit of a post protruding. And those are going to connect into a slot, you can probably barely see, right in here inside his arms. Just line it up and press it in. May take a couple of tries, but get them lined up and in just like that. And of course, once they're connected like that, fold down the hip shield to lock the legs in place. And then once we've done that, you can fold over his legs to completely conceal the arms. Of course, they like to separate a bit too. If things pop free, you just re-snap it back into place. And we just get the one arm to go in the way it's supposed to. There we go. Get you Back in position. And there we go. Then lastly, turn him around and you can raise up these black bars on his legs. Rotate this one over first, followed by the other, and merge them together in the center. Excuse me a second, I don't want to merge. So that was the importance of getting those black posts on the legs to connect into the arms. If they're perfectly connected, everything will connect together. If they aren't, then as you saw, we get a bit of a mess. Now, of course, as was stated, we'll show you here, you can easily still push the buttons to open up the tape door, and we drop Eject inside. And Blaster becomes a boombox. Very similar to his 1985 release. Of course, I call it a boombox. There are some that would use the slang of calling it a ghetto blaster. But unfortunately, I think that term is rather derogatory in what it implies. Plus, being a James Bond fan, whenever I hear the term ghetto blaster, it makes me think of the boombox rocket launcher weapon that was shown in the movie The Living Daylights. But at any rate, there's one other feature that Blaster has real quick. If you turn him around on the back side, you'll notice right here in the middle of his back there's a small post protruding out. And that's for storing his rifle. Because on the one side here, there's a nice square hole right along the side of the gun barrel, the gun grip. And you can easily just press that on there and you have storage. Talk about perfection. So now we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of Blaster and Eject? I definitely think this is a nice improvement over the original toy. Heck, it's even an improvement over the Titan's Return version of Blaster, which I have reviewed on this channel. This is definitely the quintessential version of Blaster. It's scaled about appropriately to the other Transformers, because as you saw, the Generation 1 version was rather tall. I like how they fixed the cassette door gimmick, so hopefully it won't wear out as easily. The Generation 1 version, it breaks very easily, and thus for many samples, including mine here, it does not work anymore. But at any rate, the boombox look, while a bit dated, it still works for Blaster. And it will always be what he's known for. I like the update to Eject. The clear body will certainly make him stand out, especially among the Decepticon ones. And of course, I do like the homage made from the gun on the new toy. It does pay good homage to the original, and it can be stored on him. Since, surprisingly, on the original toy, Blaster's pretty common, but his gun is extremely rare. If you want to know why, check out my video of the original Blaster. And that concludes my review of the Kingdom and Legacy versions of Blaster and Eject. I hope everybody certainly enjoyed it. Please do remember that if you like the content we present on this channel, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, because we do appreciate the feedback here. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.